panelist link. I just want to make sure he logs into the right session.
Okay, so we are. Should I go to Restream now? Or it automatically does it, is it?
It's online now, so it should be okay.
Why is it showing the website?
No, hold on. Okay, that's weird. Facebook is live. I guess it looks like it.
Facebook is live?
Yeah, it is. If you stop sharing your screen, Lavi.
Are we good?
Yeah, if you stop sharing your screen, please.
I did.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, the lag. Okay,
just
sorry, lag.
Are we now live on all the 5 different YouTube, Facebooks, and everything else?
Alvin, are we live on Hatch?
Alvin, are you on mute? You want me to check on my phone?
No, it's working for me.
Okay, so long as it's working for you, we're good. You want to start a watch party and all that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. And LinkedIn, how do we get that on LinkedIn? Karthika?
Yeah.
Alvin, just can you make sure you change my name to Lavindra and Karthika to Karthika, please?
We can change it ourselves, probably.
Can we?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah, he's doing it. Alvin, you can hear us now, right? You're not unmuted, right? Yeah. So we are live on Hatch as well?
Yes, we are.
Great.
Lavi, as host, if it's not letting me rename anything beyond mine.
Okay. So I go to my participants to do that, Karthika?
Yeah.
Rename. Yeah, got it. Wonderful. The joys of technology.
How long have we got?
About 45 minutes to an hour.
5 minutes to an hour. Okay.
We stop right on the hour. Like we don't go over. We're very un-Asian that way.
Un-Asian.
more un-South Asian, but okay.
yeah, true.
And we'll start right on time as well. We were actually technically live now on Facebook, so.
But you got the 6 kind of questions that I was still posing for myself, right? So that's kind of how I thought we've kind of set the format up. So I've got something to talk to specifically, unless you kind of take it in a different way, or off this direction and off in that direction.
Will it flow? Yeah, whatever direction is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We have some questions as well, but you know.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is there like, do you want to do an introduction thingy or?
Yeah. I'll do that, and I'll let you sort of further introduce yourself. I'll give you a little bit of a snippet of your background, just almost a snippet, and then we can have them take it away, and you can sort of. Let me just knock my WhatsApp off from here so it doesn't ping me. Okay, got rid of that. So that's good. I won't have any weird beeps and bumps as we sort of speak.
You're talking about being mystery shopper being something in the 40s or something. Like.
No, but she was mystery shopping for Caesar's Pizza, right? And it was like a low-end pizza chain, and she would come home with like 30 pizzas in the car. And we would offer it. This is in the US. Little Caesar. We would offer the pizza to homeless people, and they would be like, "No." I'm like, "Why not?" I guess that people did weird things into pizza and gave it to homeless people or whatever. But people they were like, "No, we don't want it." And we used to give the neighbors. And after a while, we had so much pizza. Like, I mean, this is every week. And they're like, no, we have enough pizza. We put it in the freezer. I was like, thank you. We don't need your pizza. So such a shame. You couldn't even get rid of it, I mean, Yeah. So
Well, I do love pizza, but now I had to find people who make pizza with vegan cheese.
yes, that's easy. Real life.
I-
That's the best. We import it into India. So
is that right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. My
And I,
wife
and
does.
I've,
My
and I've,
wife
I
does.
really, I really lately I've been looking for cream cheese, and cream cheese is not. There's so many different types of cream cheese, and the only one that really kind of I found one that is really like the texture, the taste, the smell, and the kind of it responds to the biscuit dipping
Right.
as real cream cheese does. But the rest of them some of them seem so plasticky and kind of like fake, you know.
Yeah, I mean they're getting better. There's actually quite a lot of them.
Mm.
Sorry, did somebody? Yeah, that's good. So yeah, the vegan ones are getting better and better every year.
Yeah,
I mean, they only
yeah,
started coming out in about a year and a half ago,
right,
and they've steadily improved. Even the ones at Tesco are really good now.
right.
Yeah, and the vegan ones, and they keep. Real Life has a nice black pepper and cheddar one that's really good. But I mean,
Real life. Ah, okay.
Violife, yeah, it's VIOLIFE.
VIL.
I like
Oh,
VIO life.
yeah, yeah, life. Okay.
One
Oh,
word.
okay.
Yeah,
Hadn't heard of them. I had to look
yeah,
those
they
up.
they just got acquired by a company there for $750 million.
That would be nice to be acquired.
Yeah, they're the largest. They're the largest and best vegan cheese company in the world now, out of Greece,
Oh,
actually.
okay. Oh,
Yeah,
okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And they're
there's a few that I
federated.
took. I have tried the US ones and stuff like this. I'm trying to think of the brand name. Is so like
Daya probably.
no, this one called Green Valley that I was trying. That was
Oh,
it
okay.
was it was it was really like the real thing. And I mean, I used to
Oh,
consume
good.
a lot of that kind of cheese. And then when I decided to go vegan, of course, I went cold turkey for 6 months. Never had any cheese, and I think I really miss cheese.
Alvin, do I go ahead and say start webinar now? Karthik, I'm just going to go say start webinar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm letting everybody in. Karthik, what I didn't do is I didn't put the title on branding courage on Restream. Can you do that?
Yeah, I did that already.
Okay, good. See, that's why we have backup on backup.
Anticipation. That's what it's called.
All right, let's start.
Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you're in the world. And joining us today on Pandemic Punditry's Marketing in a Pandemic, we are thrilled and honored to have Colin Anderson, the Managing Director of Brand and founder of Brand Courage with us, joining us from Singapore today. So today we're going to talk about branding in courageous times. And then boy, these are such times. Really happy to have you with us, Colin. And I know that you were a managing director of Ogilvy for a while as well. You have a very sort of extensive and accomplished background in terms of your field. So might be useful to our listeners to sort of and viewers to sort of get an idea of your background and sort of what you've been doing in the last few years.
Okay. Well, firstly, let me say thank you to both of you for inviting me along to talk to you today. So this is the first time we've done a webinar together. So it's kind of like a little bit of a debut. And of course, want to make this happen again and again and again. Maybe to start off with saying, that, I always feel that in order for you to improve, you always have to think about going outside your comfort zone. Now, it's like everybody talks about public speaking as being outside their comfort zone, but that's not actually the analogy I'm drawing. What I wanted to say is to those guys and ladies and guys who are listening to us today is that, brand is definitely an area that a lot of people feel is outside of their comfort zone. And so today, I'd like to be able to spend a little bit of time kind of reassuring them that it's not so difficult and not so such an audacious task to take on and look at your brand in a kind of constructive way. So to answer your question a little bit about my background, I actually began my career in the 80s as a designer. And as a graphic designer, kind of what my key focus was on identity. But very quickly, I found that there was a serious problem. And that was that, design by definition is the optimum in a particular set of circumstances. And talking to clients didn't really understand design. They didn't understand, the context of what it is that I did as an identity designer. So I had to kind of reinvent the process of how do I find out what is the particular set of circumstances. And what's really prevalent to that, and what happened, why is that relevant today, is that especially when you talk about COVID and you talk about what is happening, this is a matter of we have to realign what we see as our circumstances. We're no longer in the same world. In fact, simply looking at how technology has changed everything. Again, growing up in the 80s, I used to do a lot of corporate literature, and we used to do everything manually. There was no such thing as computers, no such thing as the internet. If you wanted to research something, you go to the library. Nowadays, it makes my job a lot easier. If I want to look at all the competitors for a company, I just look at their websites, and I really have a very clear idea of how everybody does what they do. So you mentioned also that, of course, that my business now, and I've been running this one for 15 years, after I kind of sold an original business to Ogilvy. I wasn't the managing director of Ogilvy, but I was the managing director of the business that I took over with them, which was at that time called Enterprise IG. Now it's called Super Union, and it's probably one of the biggest brand identity companies in the world. But I digress. Brand Courage really, for me, is a boutique brand and communications business. We have offices in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and I've done work all over the region, including India. And I'm happy to say that it's always a pleasant experience working with Indian companies. My kind of my mantra is "Fortune favors the brave," and I actually used that long before John Wick used it on his movies. You know those ones, right?
Yes.
Yes,
he has
we
it tattooed.
do.
He has it tattooed on his back. Well, I don't have it tattooed on my back, but anyway.
But do you have the dog?
I used to. Unfortunately, he passed away, but that's another story. When I say, fortune favors brave, it's not just me that has to be brave. And I mean, yes, I do think that I have to really tell it as it is. I'm not really an order taker, but someone that really has to look and give my clients good advice. It also comes down to the fact that, brands have to be brave as well. And, now more than ever, you really have to reevaluate what you're doing, how you're saying it, how you're going to market. Every single aspect of your experience, it really comes into question. So, in kind of thinking about what I wanted to say in this kind of in context, maybe for the viewer's perspective, giving them an idea of what brand is, and especially from a practitioner's perspective, I usually use this definition, and it's the kind of like the formal definition for brand is the management's long-term strategy for the protection and exploitation of intangible assets for commercial advantage. And you go, what? What is that? What did you say?
So it's clearly not just a logo.
No, brand is behavior and it is reputation. And you think of it, that formula, brand equals behavior equals reputation. It is how we behave. It is how we want to be seen in the future. And with that definition, it's going to touch a lot of other things. We say kind of sometimes, it's the intangible assets can outweigh the value of the tangible. If someone like, say, for instance, Apple, suddenly all of their physical assets disappeared tomorrow, how much would that brand still be worth? In fact, it would still be intact and probably at the same commercial value that it has in the marketplace right now. Another kind of way to look at this, Einstein said, sometimes what counts cannot be counted, and what can be counted doesn't count. And the question always asked to me is, I'm going to do this exercise with my brand. How much value will it increase? And it's an intangible value is really, really hard to kind of like wrap your head around. So, usually in the context of when I'm talking to a client like that, especially if they've got a very kind of rational perspective on what value actually means, I use an example of the humble IKEA bag. So if I'm presuming in India you have IKEA. I mean, yes, they're the biggest restaurant chain in the world, believe it or not. But yes. IKEA produce these little tote bags, right? They're blue and they've got a slash around, and if you have them inside, they're yellow, and the outside they're blue, right? They're about 90 cents in Singapore. Now, I was in Malaysia the other day, not the other day, but 6 months ago, and I went past a retail chain called Off-White. You might be familiar with that brand. It's quite a high-end fashion shop. And in the window, they had this IKEA bag. I mean, it was just like the IKEA bag. It's the same size. It had the straps, everything. So I went inside and said, so how much is this bag worth? Yeah, and said $295.90 US. So, it's not the material value. It's the fact that it has a label on it, that suddenly the humble 90 cents IKEA bag becomes worth $295 US. Okay. So it's not that you can just stick a price tag on it and it works. How does that kind of figure? And now you're going to kind of work into the area where we're going to touch the sloppy wet stuff between people's ears, right? Just imagine, say, for instance, you're going to buy a car. All right. So, when you look at buying a car, there's lots of things that you can evaluate. You can evaluate its price, its weight, its fuel efficiency, its engine, its torque, power, acceleration, all things very important. Okay. And if I list this all out and you compare all these vehicles in that way, it'll be very, very hard. But if I said to you, Mercedes, BMW, Jaguar, Aston Martin, it gives you a totally different feeling. You start to imagine things. You start to have a thought in your head that comes maybe from your background, maybe from a past experience, maybe something that you admired, maybe, I've always aspired to be this, or I've always had that and I've wanted this. And all these kind of things come to play. They are emotional things. And that's really kind of where that brand resides. I'll give you an example. I was meeting up for lunch with an Indian friend of mine, and it's pouring with rain in Singapore. And I usually ride a motorbike. So if I'm going to go to his house in the rain, I'm going to definitely get soaked. Anyway, he offered to pick me up in his car. I've never actually been in his car. And so my girlfriend and I were walking downstairs and we kind of just guessed. He said, so what car do you think he drives? And my girlfriend said, I think he's an Audi. He's kind of like he likes the German precision kind of cars. I said, no. I think he's a very conservative. Maybe he's a bit kind of like tight with the money. I think it's a Toyota, right? Reliability, dependability. And I don't know, but here, all the cars here are all over $100,000 at least. And here, you can only use them for 10 years, and then they have to be scrapped at zero value. So what you spend on a car very quickly diminishes over time. Mm-hmm. So guess what car you have? Can you give me a guess? Was it the Toyota or was it the Audi?
I'd say a Toyota.
Okay. Karthika, what did you say?
I'd say an Audi.
Okay. Well, actually, it was a Maserati.
I thought it was going to be outside of the question there.
It's amazing. I mean, it's how you read people and how you think and what you think they like and what they're going to do can sometimes be very amazing, right? So, again, going back to this whole thing, it is kind of like it's the experience, and that's kind of what that brand stands for. What a brand is, it's kind of like an experience, so getting into his car, the smell of the leather, the feel of acceleration when he shot off, poof, like that. Well, okay, it's definitely not a Toyota. And that's kind of how we kind of see a brand, is that we view it by our experiences. We view it by the touch points that it's had in our life. Again, maybe continuing the car analogy is, if you just recently had an accident with a nasty guy that jumps out of a Mercedes, maybe you kind of have a negative feeling towards Mercedes because it rubs off on you.
Yeah.
Right. So this concept, I think, you gave a really brilliant definition about the emotional versus the rational sort of valuation that one puts to brand, right? So given sort of the times that we are in, where some of us who own Maseratis or even a Toyota or a humble Mini Cooper cannot seem to get out of the garage because there's not much of that going on from a perspective, right? So or a Hyundai for example. So you can't really some of these brands are having a tough time. I mean, I read a statistics this morning that 19 million salaried jobs in India were lost. 25 million salaried jobs in Southeast Asia have been lost, right? So these are sort of times where companies are struggling to sort of maybe get the attention of the limited amount of spend that's available. So how does sort of one appeal to either the rational or the emotional aspects of a brand? So if you're a company, a CEO or a marketer, how would you, do you rebrand yourself or redefine yourself? What is the sort of the prescriptional strategy, or do you sort of, move your brand from, maybe you were known for say, Maserati, for example, right? Now, you want to, obviously they're not flying off the showrooms because there's hardly any driving going on, or maybe there is a way to sort of, a smart branding marketer would come up with a way to keep the brand in people's minds in these times when everybody's sort of sequestered.
I mean, I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example of this. And it's funny because I was having a conversation with a very good friend of mine who's also he has his own branding company as well. And we were having this kind of like discussion about the difference between the strategy of McDonald's versus the strategy of Burger King and KFC. So we both took different perspectives. So we were polar in it. So I took actually the KFC / Burger King strategy, and he took the McDonald's strategy, which was during COVID, and especially in Singapore, where we had this period of time where it was very obvious that we had to shut everything down. Now, I know India is a very difficult place to shut down. Singapore, at least, we're only 6 million people, and we're only, 50 miles, across and 50 miles deep. So we're a lot easier to contain. But, McDonald's took the premise that they were going to shut all of their stores. They didn't want to spread anything to their staff. They didn't want to spread anything to customers. They just shut down. However, the opposite was actually true of Kentucky Fried Chicken. They said they wanted to celebrate the fact that, we knew that our customers were stuck at home, that they didn't have access to, all the normal things they've had. They couldn't go out and dine. So come and get your takeaway food from us, and we'll keep you happy. So, which strategy is right and which strategy is wrong? After the fact, when you come back, actually McDonald's, bounced back, but has Kentucky Fried Chicken actually gained market share because they were there with you going through that process? Or is it McDonald's was seen as the ones that were very altruistic, not caring about profit, but really looking to try to make sure that nothing was spread? And I think both strategies are actually valid. Right? So there isn't any rights or wrongs in this. And sometimes these things can backlash to you in different ways. I'm deliberately not answering the question, but, it is like when you look at your circumstances, you have to consider, what everybody else does within your business. I'm going to give you an instance like, when you are comparing yourself against your competitor and what strategy they're doing, it definitely will impact you. You cannot think of yourself as being alone. Some people have taken the taking a cause, for instance, so, all this stuff about Black Lives Matters, people are jumping on the bandwagon. Oh, we do this. Why? Because they're trying to get attention for their brands. They're trying to stand out. I was talking to a friend the other day about what Ben and Jerry were doing in England. And he was specifically there, and he said something about how Ben and Jerry were talking out against the UK government, who said that they wanted to stop all of these people coming across the border from France, illegal immigrants. Yet actually, when you look at it and their practices in the US, they were actually recently prosecuted by the US government for using unregistered illegal labor in the US market and paying them and treating them irresponsibly. So, if you're going to take a course, you better make sure that you're really committed to that cause. Don't do it as something that is superficial, something that you kind of think, oh, it's a marketing angle, But it's if you are who you are, if you can be true to who you are. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, because your question is a little bit complex to answer because you haven't got all the bits yet. Right. But to premise that, I would say that you need to have something that's very compelling, and it has to be absolutely true. So what I'm saying, a compelling truth is both of those things. And if you can get that right, whether we are in a crisis, whether we're in a COVID situation, whether we're some other thing, this is what really counts. This is what really means something to our consumers. So maybe, again, coming back to say, giving a difference between rational and emotional behaviors, I wanted to say that, a lot of times, we think as business owners that everybody's thinking about our business, about our brands, but they're not, right? I usually use this kind of analogy, and I got this actually from a I think it was from McDonald's. It was a cup, and it had a picture of Homer Simpson on, and it had on the top, it said, "The thoughts of Homer." And actually, if you looked at his brain, what it said was really interesting, because this is true. When we go out to compete in the marketplace, we're not competing against, say, for instance, we're in real estate. We're not competing against other real estate companies. What we're competing against is sex, donuts, and sweet, sweet beer. And that's exactly what was in Homer's head. And it's very true. It's like people aren't thinking about this. They're not kind of like in a kind of like an open mode. They're kind of like closed in their thoughts. They're thinking about something else. And, to give you kind of an idea about this, they say conscious versus unconscious. So conscious works at about 20 bits per second. That's how much thinking, you see my face, you hear my voice. Maybe you can see what's in the background behind me. That's working for you at about 20 bits per second. But there's another 8 million bits that you're processing right now that you're not even aware of. Okay, so the feeling of your clothes on your skin, the temperature of the room, the ambient sound, all these things are things that are going on in your head. So let me get to the point, right? So say, for instance, you're going to the supermarket and you're going to buy your groceries. So I don't know how long you guys take. I usually take about 45 minutes to half an hour maximum, right? I want to get in, get out, right? If you had to choose every single product on your list, it will take you about 8 hours. The reason why it only takes you half an hour is because you've already made up your mind. So you have to think in the context, even say in COVID, that you are competing with a whole bunch of stuff that are already automated. There's already a whole bunch of things that are already there. And you're going to have to create something very meaningful, very compelling in order to get that cut through. So, I've done a lot of packaging design. So packaging design is like, we call it the last 3 feet or the last meter where you can get someone to change their minds. But, in terms of the customer, what they're buying a lot of times is they're not buying a product, they're buying something that they imagine is part of their life. So you kind of got to fit into them. You've got to understand what they think, how they feel in order to really be relevant. So sometimes when I work with clients, I say to them, so imagine that you're a superhero. I say, what is your superpower? And I try to get them to kind of reveal to me what is really compelling and what is really true. And it's not an easy thing to find. So if you're out there and you're a brand owner, you have to really think very, very hard about this question. And it comes down to the question about why. So it's why me? Why am I relevant? Why choose me? And there's a lot of things that obviously work against you. When I think about the worst strategies ever, I actually don't think about commercial things. I actually think about movies. So you think about Star Wars, right? So I don't know if you guys are Star Wars fans.
Oh yeah, I am. We're both nerds, so yeah.
No, so am I. So so here it is. The Imperial, right? Death. You got Darth Vader. You got all these guys, and they invent the Death Star. So the Death Star is the one thing that's going to kill all the rebels and terrorize everybody. But unfortunately, there's always a weakness, and the rebels somehow come along and they find that weakness, they exploit that weakness, and they blow it up. So what is the strategy that the Imperial depart with? Build a bigger Death Star. And guess what? The rebels find the weakness, they blow it up. And what they do? We're going to build the Death Planet. Yeah, that will do it. There's a problem here. Can you see the problem with their strategy, right? They're thinking along the same lines all the time. In COVID, we're going to have to change the way we think. Apple used to actually have a strategy or a stat line, which I used to love, called Think Differently. And it's kind of that's kind of where it has to be. And again, just do another little story. You think about Charles Darwin. He said that it isn't the strongest or the smartest of any species that will survive. It's that is the most responsive to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, Colin, I had an interesting question, because you were talking a lot about brands and what value the brands can provide, etc., and the difference between rational and emotion, right? It's interesting because I think when COVID broke, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google Alphabet, he wrote saying, in this unprecedented moment, we feel a great responsibility to help. So how can brands help? And follow-up question to that is, how can you then create an effective brand that is seen as being helpful?
Right. So the trick here is, how do I help but not look like I'm trying to help because I want something out of it? If you're truly altruistic, if you truly have something that is not a marketing ploy, because people see through it. I mean, the thing about the internet is that it reveals everything. I can't remember the actual campaign, but I think it was one of these large organizations in the UK who were basically firing people, and the people that were being fired were talking about it through Twitter. And it was the marketing director who said, now, how do I turn this Twitter thing off? Because he wanted to stop the conversation that made his company look bad. Right. The fact is that people know everything. I mean, I love how all those things happened with, Dr. Dow. Remember this guy who got assaulted on the plane while he was traveling United Airlines, right? And the CEO came up with this kind of speech to his team saying, well done, you did the best thing, blah, blah, blah. And of course, everybody knows everything, so the videos really, everybody can, and it comes down to, well, is that a good thing for the brand when they suddenly their share price took a big dive? That's not a good thing, is it really? So, authenticity becomes a really important characteristic of your brand plan. And you don't plan it just because it's COVID. You plan it because you're going to have to live past COVID and past the next crisis and the next crisis and the next crisis, right? So being authentic to yourself is really important. And I say, sometimes, how do I find what is my voice? What is my authenticity? What do I really mean? And in a general context, business only has two things to do: to innovate and to market. That's it, right? Everything else doesn't count. So if you're going to do this and you think that's my role as a brand owner, or as a business owner, as an asset owner, whatever it is that I'm in the business of, that's what I'm there to do: to find innovation, to innovate in my space, and to take that to the marketplace. And brand actually is the driving force for both. If you think about, you decide on, this is the type of business I am, this is what I am committed to, therefore these are the things I'm going to do. So, yes, jumping on a cause, great idea, but make sure that it really is what you believe in, and it's not some fake thing that has been dropped up by the marketing department. If
your human values, what you're saying is, if your values to begin with, were based on some fundamentals, like say for example, you had altruism, sustainability from an environmental perspective, just caring for the planet as sort of a core value prior to your sort of journey, or prior to COVID or any crisis, and that's part of your authentic self, right? So then championing those values through your brand is completely authentic, and legitimate, right? But this sudden, and what you're cautioning against, I guess, is in this narrative is that sudden adoption, unless it's sort of core to your values, of causes, however popular they may be at the time, maybe it's detrimental to your overall brand if it can't be sustained by behavior, action, and past history.
Remember, brand equals behavior equals reputation. That's what I said in the beginning, and I hold that true. I mean, one of the ways of being able to find the solution to this, and especially in COVID where things have been slow, is to take the time to really, look at yourself under the microscope, to really re-examine those values. And one of the ways you can do this is to walk in the shoes of your consumers. Walk through their shoes, see it through their eyes, and see how you look and how you appear. Online gives everybody a plethora of choices. So again, ask the question, why this brand, why this company, why this service, why this offering? And we were talking earlier about, mystery shopping, and mystery shopping is also a kind of way. And there's a show that I love in the US and UK where it's the Undercover Boss. And the undercover boss goes in as a worker. He's wearing a kind of disguise and he has a false identity, and he's usually a lowly worker who goes into the factory and starts working with his people, but they don't know it's him. And the funny thing is that what he discovers is always, he discovers people that are on brand, and he discovers people that are not on brand. Those people that are on brand they espouse the values that he put in as the founder of that company, and they live that day in, day out. And then he meets other people that unashamedly go run against that, and they are doing detriment to his brand. So of course, when he's finished this thing and he reveals himself, I'm really the secret boss, those people that have done really well in his eyes are usually rewarded. And those people that obviously haven't, then, the consequences are different for them. But what is interesting is that within your own company, within your own business, there's probably a lot of things going on that you're not aware of. And until you kind of are able to evaluate it at that sort of shop floor level, you're not really going to be in touch with everything. So walking through the shoes of the customer is almost like saying, what happens when people complain? Right.
So, Colin, there's actually an interesting question from one of our attendants.
Yeah.
Chris Langwall.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for your question.
Us, Chris. So he's basically saying he'd love to pick your brain on the gap that exists between human values and purchasing behavior, right? Because what he's saying is, in settings such as focus groups, people answer one way, but the moment they're in front of a supermarket shelf, their buying behavior doesn't reflect their focus group answer. And how can a brand help close this gap?
Okay, because what you're doing there is you're probably asking the most obvious question, and people lie. They don't always tell the truth. Focus groups are always interesting because there's also a group dynamic. So people feel a little bit intimidated to say what they really mean in front of everybody. So you've got to find another way of being able to find out what people think other than just the humble focus group and asking the obvious questions. Sometimes what I tend to do, especially in a focus group, is I'm asking questions that unearth their real motivations. You've really got to delve into what people see in what it is that they're purchasing, and this is not a simple question to answer because, again, it depends a lot on the product, it depends on the group of people. There's a whole range of different variables involved. But I would say, in the first instance, if you're getting a difference between human values and the purchase behavior, it's because people are lying about it. So you've got to find a way of making people be able to tell the truth without necessarily being judged, or that they are revealing something to you that they don't want to, and this goes very deep into the whole way you research a brand and what the brand is worth and how it is valued. And that's why, Secret Shopper is a really interesting way to go, because it's revealing secret behaviors. The same shopper can perform different types of responses on different days. So it's completely infuriating to anybody that's expecting it to be one size fits all, or we're trying to make everybody conform to a certain behavior difference. I never look at demographic, I look at psychographic, and I try to understand the thinking behind people. What do you read? What car do you drive? Where do you live? What values do you have? What kind of family background is there? All those things can add up to a different kind of look, or how you profile your ideal customer. And that's why I'm saying, sometimes by doing this kind of customer journey is a way of being able to step through it in a very kind of methodical way to make sure that you plug the holes and close the gaps. Say for instance, if you're a coffee shop and you're going to, launch a new product, how do you do that? Do you consult with the customers first? Do you show them what you have in mind in the terms of flavors, the packaging? They try it, they get involved in it, so that when the product goes to launch, they have some kind of empathy for it? Or is it that you don't? You just, here it is, do you like it? Now, there's two very different approaches. And again, when you think about research, you think about how you then talk to customers, I don't ask them the most obvious questions. Like, say, for instance, if I'm a hotel, what did you think of the bed? What did you think of the F&B experience? Maybe you ask the question, what is the most fantastic holiday you've ever had? And then you'll get a very different emotional response, one that is maybe more authentic, more honest, and more useful. Because then you can think, okay, if they really think like that, then I have to do this. And it's not going to be a literal translation. It's going to be something where you have to think a lot harder. I talked about that spa thing, right, with you earlier on. And here's here's another one where, I was working with a hotel group in Indonesia, and again, I was actually not there on a secret shopper, but because I was going to be working with this brand, I thought what I'd do is a little bit of kind of homework. So, I walked into the hotel room. God, there's a pubic hair in the bathtub. There was a dead cockroach underneath the sink. I photographed all these things. And why? Because I want to show them what the experience is like. Do you know, this is what I saw? And that's me. I mean, maybe the other people see other things. Michael Wolff, who was, a very famous advertising person, he said that he has a book, actually. It's called You Are a Towel. And, you go into a hotel, and if the towel is kind of a bit dirty, you then find, there's a crack in the wall, there's this, there's that, and you start to evaluate it from a very negative perspective. So, his philosophy there is that you are that towel. What are you going to be, and what are you going to bring to it? It's another kind of way to look at it.
Colin, sorry, we've just had another question come in. Because you're focusing a lot on experiences and stuff, what the audience really want to know is whether the traditional 4 P's of marketing, product, price, promotion, place, do they matter, or is it more about solution than product? And I think we can tag on to that to say what then are the 5 P's of your brand?
Okay, so that's really good. Let me say that, we talk, when we talk about branding, I try to think about a way to make it easier for everybody to remember everything about their brand, right? Okay, so I kind of create, this kind of, remember I said to you, when I was the designer, nobody kind of understood what it was that I did. So it's the same with brand. I try to make it very simple. 5 P's. What are the 5 P's? Purpose, positioning, personality, promise, and platform. Okay. So let me explain a little bit about each one of them. And usually what I do is I then condense everything that's in that down to one single page. I learned this trick from working with Unilever. Actually, I was working with Hindustan Lever in India when I did this one. Is that they have a thing called the brand key. And it actually is a little bit more complicated and a little bit harder to understand. But anyway, it's basically the same kind of elements. But the 5 P's, we start off with purpose. What are you for? What purpose do you serve? What business are you in, and who are you for? Give you an example of this. So Apple. Okay, everyone knows Apple, right? Don't have to explain what they do. Did you know that in the movies, when it comes to product placement, no bad guy ever carries an Apple phone?
Didn't know that.
Right?
Didn't know.
Right. So what does that tell you, right? They are for the good guys, right? They're the good brand, right? Only the heroes carry their brand, right? Okay. So deciding on who you are for, right? The type of audience you're trying to attract and the kind of business that you're in is really the foundation of everything. Ask that question, why should I exist? And that becomes really the base point. It's the building block of everything else. The most rational probably of all the emotional kind of elements that you have to consider. So positioning, number 2, you are not alone. There was many people who always say the same things. And I've done this for companies where I've gone into, looked at a competitor set. I make a list of all of the brand promises that they make, and they all kind of sound very similar. So that's a good thing, because that means what I can do is come up with something very different and stand out from the rest. You've got to ask yourself, what are your USPs? Right? You know, so unique selling points, unique sort of proposition, whatever you'd like to call those words. It means, do I have something that's unique to me that nobody else does? In this word, it's very, very tough. It's very tough to differentiate that way. So think about them also from a tangible benefit and also an emotional benefit perspective. Do you also have something that you know about the marketplace that nobody else does? An insight. That also can help you with positioning. And I say this, to say, you can't be everything to everybody, because otherwise you'll be nothing to nobody. So you have to be very, very persistent about that. So the next P is personality. So the best example I can give of personality is say I use myself. Okay, so what are my attributes? What does it make? What do I have in me that makes me useful to my clients? I have to be gutsy, grounded, and curious. Gutsy enough to stand up and say what I mean, what I think, what I believe. Grounded that I've done the homework. I understand the market terrain. I've looked where nobody else will look, right? And curious, because I really want to turn over every stone. I want to find out more. I want to probe you harder. I want to make you work harder to learn about yourself and about your brand. So the personality attributes are really important. They can set the tone of voice for a brand. It can be the way that you talk, you know, and say, for instance, the example I give you is usually innovation. So we said that innovation and marketing are the two things. But if everybody's about innovation, don't tell me that you're an innovative brand, because every brand is innovative, right? So don't pick things that everybody will want, because you can't have them.
Just on the note of innovation, Colin, sorry to interrupt, but there's a tag-on question from Paul Emerson. Thanks for joining us today, Paul. So regarding brand innovation, one, what comes first, the product or the consumer? And he says, if there's time to, is there a recommended approach to innovation from Colin?
Okay, so what is innovation? If you look at the textbook definition of innovation, actually, it's tinkering, right? I mean, I work with this guy he's one of the kind of like founding guys in Singapore in the sort of early 90s, and you know, I said to him, you know, he was actually the chairman of a thing called A-Star, which is like a collection of all the top agencies that are research and development and innovation, everything, right? So I said to him, so, you know, all this must be about innovation. He says, no, we're not innovators. We're discoverers. We discover things. Innovation is just tinkering. We discover things. Oh, okay. And, you know, from that, you know, you think innovation, you know, is about taking something that exists and moving it forward. It's taking the next step. Right? It's not necessarily changing everything or being disruptive. Yes, you know, it's great if you can be that, but not everybody can be disruptive. Not everybody's going to be a Grab. Not everybody's going to be an Airbnb, right? And for those people that have that privilege, fantastic. But for us mere mortals, we have to kind of be satisfied with taking, you know, version, you know, 2.0 and making 3.0. But it is a very important thing. But if you don't have an innovation, if you don't have a way forward, you really are not going to be able to compete in the future. If you're going to be a Me Too product, you know, and sometimes, you know, an innovation can be simply something of looking at what is the trend that everybody is going towards, and then seeing, is there something that able to fit my product or my service to meet that? So like an example of this, Capital Land, they're one of the biggest property owners in Singapore. They have about 10 office towers here. So they asked us to think about, what would Office 4.0 be like? How would we communicate this to, and how would we make an offering around this? You know, and it comes down to something like, okay, so the millennials actually think about, you know, what is that building doing with all of its electricity? Is it kind of good for the environment? Do you have, you know, if somewhere I cycle my bike to work, is there end of journey facilities for me able to take a shower and change my clothes? And those kind of questions then say, actually, well, the way people look at the office environment is very different to the way that probably, you know, my age group did. You know, it was a place I turned up, I had a desk, I worked. Now they see it as something that actually has to be positive, you know, environmentally positive. It has to be sensitive to these things. So developers have to change their whole strategy to move away from I'm just building a concrete, glass and steel building to I'm building a community. The companies that come and work there want to recruit good people, but these good people won't join them unless they have a feeling that their company is in the right place. So then the strategy of the companies that they then take on as tenants then becomes part of their strategy in order to be, you know, a place that is work positive. So you see, you know, it's kind of everything's connected to everything else, and you can't avoid, you know, that kind of like the thing, innovation, you know, marketing. They're kind of in a cycle. They're linked together. They're indivisible as such. Okay, so I was just talking to you about purpose, positioning, personality, promise. So this is where it kind of comes together. Now I mentioned to you something called compelling truth, and you know, to me that's really like the crux of it. Is what is your mantra? What is the narrative? What is the story behind your brand? And you know, I had a couple of young guys that came to me the other day who had invented a superfood product, and they said, look, you know, we come up with the packaging, we come up with a name, we got all the, you know, everything. They said, but we don't have a story. I said, so why did you do this? What made you go and do this? He said, well, this guy is about 6 foot tall. He's an Indian guy, about 6 foot tall. And he said to me, you know, I used to be like 250 pounds. And I said, look, you're kidding me. You're like, you know, really? He goes, yeah, well, because I changed my diet, because I started to look at superfood as a way of me being able to change my physique and change my health and change my outcomes. And he said, and it was easy. It's easy. So I said, I want to tell other people it's easy. I said, well, there's your story. That is the story of your brand. That's the authenticity. You are the story of that brand. And so telling that story, then he becomes a real brand, not just a marketing ploy, not just another product on the shelf. Here is somebody that's done something and he's done it himself, and he wants to share that with you. And it makes a great video. It makes a great story. It makes a compelling truth, right? So once we have these things, we have a purpose, we're clear about why we exist, we kind of know who is out there and what they're doing, and we have something different to say. We are committed to a kind of behavior, a kind of you know, a kind of experience that we want to create, and we have a promise that is really authentic. Then you're ready to say, okay, let's go to market. Let's create a brand on that basis. And you know, whether it's kind of, you know, it's you know, what channel choices you have, what kind of, you know, whether your customers are experiencing online and offline, you know, it has to be one that fits all together. And it's that kind of thing where you start to look across all your touch points to try to find that wherever people meet you, whenever they see you, they get that same feeling inside of them, that it's universal. And, you know, like say, for instance, it can be visual, it can be verbal, even down to things like, say, for instance, the complaints. How you deal with a complaint can be a defining moment. American Express, I mean, I'm just about to cut up my American Express card again, but, you know, they're fantastic at service recovery. You know, that's one of their strongest points, but people don't realize this, right? So, you know, if you look at the different channels there are, I mean, you know, 61% people are looking online. 17% is broadcast material, 9% is through gaming. I mean, that's a huge opportunity space for certain types of products, that their audience is gaming. You know, I was watching a movie the other day where these terrorists were talking to each other, but they were using it through the gaming console, you know, and that's the way they were able to get things, you know, so, you know, it's a real way of being able to talk to customers. Broadcast radio is only 8%, and print medium, you know, where I grew up on, is only 6%, you know. So online has become a huge media consumption. But then you look at online is not one place, it's a million different places. How do you decide on how to put your ad or your messages in that right place? If you've got the right message, then it's how are you going to reach the right audience? And that, again, is a huge kind of stumbling block for a lot of people. But, you know, again, I say, if you think about who are you for, and you consider what kind of things they look at, what interests they have, this kind of informs you about the media choices. So, it is a little bit of a mechanical process to begin with. We got things like you're going to have to review everything that you have in your brand. You're going to have to do an audit of that. You're going to have to look at your competitors, go to their websites, write down all the things that they say, because that tells you what not to say. You're going to have to think about what drives that business. What is your vision for the future? And align that to the kind of behaviors that you want to have, not just for yourself as the business owner, but also for all of your staff and your team. And a huge part of work that I do is internal engagement, because that thing says, the boss says, oh, we're going to be empathic, but then you get down to the shop floor and people are definitely not that. They don't give a shit, right?
Colin, sorry to interrupt you, but there's sort of a tag-on question from one of our participants, SK Sharma. Thanks for joining us today. So what essentially he's asking is, SMEs, especially during these times, really can't afford to do a proper brand study or a rebranding exercise. And is there a simpler, more cheaper way, for this process? And can they rebrand with that same effect that you're talking about?
Okay. All right, so everything I just described doesn't cost a lot of money, okay? If you are to evaluate yourself, it doesn't cost you anything except your own time. And during COVID, this is the time to navel gaze. Look at yourself. Walk through your customer's shoes means you really look at your own processes and systems. You look at everything. And is it aligned to the vision that you originally had for that business? Again, that doesn't cost anything. Looking at, say, for instance, the drivers of the business, understanding the USPs, that doesn't cost you anything. As an SME, you can do all of these processes on your own with a very little cost. Looking at your competitors, looking at their websites, understanding what you're saying versus what they're saying. No cost. You can do it yourselves. So this is a DIY kind of version of what I call brand DNA. But at the end of the day, this is the things that if you can't afford to do a brand evaluation using someone outside, a lot of these things actually are intuitive and you can do them yourself, right? So to answer that question, it doesn't really cost a lot of money to do these things. It's just the time and effort. And if you're having downtime, this is the best time to do it.
Spot on, Colin. I think a lot of people, what I'm hearing, I've been listening very intently and not asking many questions today, which is very unusual for me. As people who've been regular viewers will tell you. But, I was just mulling through, and it's really fundamentally, if you look at it, and it starts from your premise of how you define brand as is amalgamation of behaviors and reputation. So I think, and also this point you just made, which is the navel gazing, right? I mean, this is an ideal time to really understand. Maybe you were something in the past, you sort of evolved, your business has grown, or maybe you're starting something new. And when you start something new, sometimes you just start, right? I mean, you say, hey, let's capitalize on an opportunity that you see. You get going, you make a few sales, you get a few things going. And then suddenly things sort of taper off, which a typical part of the life cycle of new companies. And that's fine. I think that will be a great time to sort of reevaluate and say, hey, what are we really about? Okay, that opportunity that we kind of started, that gave us 5-10 customers, maybe get us to a certain point of revenue. Those things are now tapering off. It doesn't seem like they're resonating with people that we want to chase. And maybe what I think what you're advocating and are saying that people do, and maybe on a more frequent basis than they think, is to sort of continuously reevaluate. What are we? Who are we trying to address? What is that market that we're trying to do? And what do we want to be? Because in the time that you started and the time that you've sort of progressed, competitors have also moved into that space. Others have come in and said, me too, maybe, or I'm different from Colin Anderson or Lavindra, right? So you have to sort of figure out what are the competitors have, because they be maybe a lot more competitors there than you think. And I think one of the things that this whole pandemic has done, and this whole virtual world, is that we think our competitors are the shop next door, when in fact it's a country away or a continent away, right? Because today you can buy anything anywhere, right? And people forget that, and people think, my competitor is the person I've been competing for the last 10 years, and in fact, that person is no longer your competitor. Your customers are buying from somebody from another country. Yeah, and I think that realization, that sort of self-assessment is needed. And I think you've given some great points to us to sort of ponder. And I think
look at
really crucial.
Look at say, for instance, what happens during COVID. I mean, in Singapore, there was a boom in terms of being able to buy food online. So who is the competitor? In fact, if you look at it, actually, it's not restaurants competing against each other. Actually, what it is Grab Food, and we have Food Panda here. You have different ones there, right? Mm-hmm. They were taking 35% of the market. They were taking away the value out of the restaurants. That's their profit margin. How the hell to survive? So in fact, what a lot of the restaurants started to do is to create their own way of getting the product to the customer. And as you know, I kind of, because I've become a vegan, it's like I only go to certain restaurants, and we have a good rapport with people in these restaurants, and they volunteer to give us all the food without any cost of the transportation. So, you think it's not just necessarily just that you're competing a restaurant against another restaurant or a food kind against another food kind. What you're actually competing, sometimes it's the mechanism of the business. And COVID has also created its own kind of way in which the whole ecosystem is become off balance. So, it is a very complex story. I'm not saying it's simple or easy. And to say that, I would be, undervaluing what it is that a lot of entrepreneurs have to go through. But, if you look also at things that, even though we are in a difficult time, it's really important to bear in mind the fundamentals of business. And if you look at, when I first kind of came into this business, many, many decades ago, there was a book which was called, I'm trying to think what it's called now. It's called, okay. How do I describe this then? I describe it basically was taking a sample of the top 100 Fortune 500 companies, and it compared it to the next 100 Fortune 500 companies. So from, company, from 1 to 100 went against company 199, to up to 100. And they found that there were traits about the top 100 companies versus the ones at the bottom, right? And it's these kind of traits, like, say, for instance, things like having an idea of what motivates the business and having a leadership that believes in it. Richard Lester, I think he's the guy who wrote Productivity Edge. He said something like this, and sorry if I paraphrase, it's the success is that the companies that have a deep conviction in something are more likely to survive than those companies that don't have that same deep conviction. And it must be something must be felt at every level of the organization. So the belief, no matter what it is also a driving force for success, COVID or no COVID. It's a very, very important distinction between success and failure in the long term. And I think about in industries, I think about companies, I think about products and services. So many people kind of have this sort of kind of viewpoint that it's about about sales. I'm sales driven. I value it's the sales mentality, right? If you take that away, if you think about, what other things what am I doing other than making money? Why do I want to commit my life to building my brand? Why would I want to spend all this time, in this company, and I work from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. every day. So, I want to spend that time doing something that's meaningful to me. And if you can do that and make that meaningful, not just to yourself, but also the people you work with, you create a very different dynamic and a different distinction, a different definition of success. And it's not just in value terms, in terms of dollars and cents. Right. So sometimes, use this time to kind of, go back to basics. Think about what it is that you did when you started this business. Think about why is it you want to continue in this business? And probably they're the same reasons why customers want to come to you.
Colin, really? Just before we wrap up, we covered purpose, positioning, personality, promise. I think the audience is interested to know about the last P.
Platform, is it?
Which one's
The
that?
last
Sorry.
P, purpose, positioning, personality,
Okay.
promise.
And platform. Okay, so platform is really what you go to. That's what people see. If you think about the iceberg, right? Not that you want to be on the Titanic and hit the iceberg, right? But it's always that little tidbit at the top, right? That's what people see. They see logos, they see identity, they see communications, they see strap lines, they see ads, they see the website. But without the stuff below that, that doesn't mean anything. It can't even hold up itself up. It's all the things below that surface, your values, your compelling truth, your reason to be, your whys. And that's kind of like where it's at.
Okay, so that's the definition of platform?
Platform is that. Platform is actually the last thing that you do. Is the most, the thing that everybody sees, which is your identity, your communications, your advertising. It's your outer face. But without the inner face, it doesn't have any standing, right?
Point taken. Yes. So we are right about at the hour, Colin, and
fantastic.
It's been an absolutely fascinating one. I think we've answered most of the questions that were posed to us. So thank you for sending those across to us. And I think for those of you who are probably joining us from SLASCOM Sri Lanka, you will get a chance to actually get more of Colin's wisdom in a private members only conversation we're having with him and other experts on the 2nd of September. Please join us for that. But for the rest of you, we will have a recording of this obviously on our channels. Thanks again to our main sponsor, Hatch, for making this happen. And Colin, thanks again for you. I mean, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've listened a lot more than I have asked questions today, frankly, and then Karthika finds that very amusing, frankly, because I've been learning a lot. So I usually keep my mouth shut when I'm learning. So thanks again, Colin. I think, in terms of sort of, the definition that sticks in my mind is the initial one is about behaviors and reputation. And I think people forget that how we behave, whether we behave as an individual or as a corporate entity, right? The reputation that both behaviors create is essentially the cornerstones of our brand. And I think we sometimes forget that, right? And figuring out how we want to behave or how we want to project and what is our core values, which is navel gazing that you so eloquently said that we should indulge in these pandemic times, I think is a very good starting point. And your key point there was that none of this needs to cost a lot of money. In fact, it costs a lot of time and introspection and reflection and asking, I guess, good and tough questions. Even if you're not asking them yourselves, get someone who's close to you to probably ask those questions. And I think another component here that you didn't mention probably meant was you could always talk to customers for free as well, right? So you can always call your customers up and have a chat with them and say, hey, what made you initially buy from us, and are we doing a good enough job? And expect not so positive answers. And I think that should be. I think sometimes we're scared to ask our customers because we ourselves, in the back of the mind, I don't think we've really lived up to our own promise of delivering value. And,
you hit the nail on the head there, and it is really hard sometimes to face those questions, and and to ask customers what they really think. Again, it's not something you do straightforward. Like that question you said when we do the focus groups, you can't ask them, what did you think about the bed? What did you think about the food and beverage? Correct. Ask them the question like, what is the most fantastic holiday you've ever had? And then you're going to get an answer that you can work with, right?
Correct. Correct. Very good point. Yes, exactly. Yeah, the good quality questions that not necessarily have an obvious straight answer.
Correct.
All right. Thank you so much, Colin. It's been a singular pleasure having you as usual and chatting with you. Look forward to our private one-on-one with the members of SLASCOM on the 2nd. But again, please give our regards and thanks to Ramona as well for everything on our end. So thank you, everybody, and we'll catch you soon. We have another one this evening with Mark Metry, so it's a double header of Tuesday today. Look forward to seeing all of you then as well. Take care.
Thanks, Colin. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Have a great day.